Royal Rebounds TV with Calvin and Barry. Just two crazy fans of the Sacramento Kings, and they sharing their opinion. So be sure that you subscribe. It's for the fans, by the fans. Whether you chilling on the couch or wildin' in the stands. For laid back conversations about the Kings, subscribe here. Staying down until we come up thinking this gon' be our year. We're here drinking beer, talking about the Kings. Be sure you subscribe so you can hear that bell ring. Yeah.
What up, Kings fans? Welcome back to Royal Rebounds, a YouTube channel for fans by fans.
This is the Royal Rebounds Podcast with Calvin and Barry. Kings get a big win, 2 in a row. They got momentum.
They do. We'll talk about it right after this break. We're here. We're drinking beers, and we're talking about your Sacramento Kings. If you're a Kings fan, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you enjoy fresh Kings content, consider subscribing to the channel. Calvin and I put out new content almost daily, and we talk about your Sacramento Kings. Shout out Mike, shout out Jim, shout out Makami. I see you guys here in the chat. Thanks for joining us. As Calvin mentioned, Kings win tonight, 126-114 over the Houston Rockets. King Stradamus' prediction was pretty close for this game, so Cal. I don't know if you guys watched the Royal Report this morning. If you did not, make sure you check that out. But, Cal, what's your first thoughts on the game tonight?
Well, my first thought is to echo what Mike just said in the chat here. Marvin Bagley balled out tonight. After the first quarter of this game, I was going to start the show with, hey, Monty, number 35 in white is pretty good. But number 35 in black might have outplayed him tonight.
Yeah.
It was close. But Fox and Bagley were the difference in this game for the Kings.
100%. Yeah, it was a very disappointing first quarter of basketball for your Sacramento Kings. They give up 40 points. The Houston Rockets shoot 61%. And I was feeling a little bit down. I was a little bit emotional. And I was like, you know what? If the Kings lose this game, it's time to blow it up. This is the worst team in the Western Conference. If the Kings lose to them, it's time to blow it up. And, you know, I was looking at them and I'm like, you know, this team has a really bad record, but there's a lot of good young players on this team. They have some good other players in Eric Gordon, Christian Wood, stuff like that. But all the teams in the NBA have good players on them. All of them have young talent. All of them have veterans. So there's always going to be teams on the bottom with, quote unquote, some good young players on the team. And Sacramento Kings might be one of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, the Rockets are a lot like the Kings in that sense that they have a lot of good individual players, but the team makeup isn't quite what it needs to be in order for them to be a consistent winning team in the league. And you look at these two teams, they're only separated by 5 wins. So there are a lot of parallels you can take between both of these teams, but you're right. It's a good thing that the Kings were able to pull this game out, because if they didn't, this show probably would have been a little different.
Yeah, definitely would have been a lot more negative. But as Cal mentioned, huge game for Marvin Bagley tonight. Another big game for De'Aaron Fox. I was pretty surprised. Christian Wood had an amazing game, considering he sat most of the second quarter really with 3 fouls, which was just, you know, goes to show how good of a player he is. But, you know, we got to look at Jalen Green. We got to see Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood. I think Tate played really well. We just got to see Eric Gordon.
Jae'Sean Tate is a very underrated player in this league. I will say that. And also, when you're talking about Christian Wood, you know, we got to see both why he is as good as he is, but you also got to see a lot of his inefficiencies tonight. Marvin Bagley killed him in the low post.
Yep.
Absolutely killed him. And Marvin Bagley is not a great low post player. He had a really, really good game, and I give him a lot of credit for that tonight. But we talk a lot about Christian Wood being the type, one of those players that the Kings should really be after. And tonight definitely made me think twice about that.
Yeah, awesome game by Marvin Bagley. Let's jump here into the box score, Cal, so we can go over some of these numbers because, as we always say, we're critical of players when they don't play well, and we praise them when they do play well. So yes, we need to give him some praise.
For sure. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, it was the De'Aaron Fox and Marvin Bagley show tonight for a lot of this game. Fox ends with 27 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, did have 4 turnovers, but another very efficient game for him. I actually thought he was going to go over 40, probably midway through the third quarter of this game. Marvin Bagley, 26 points, season high, 13 rebounds, 2 blocks, 12 of 20 from the floor. He was great. Harrison Barnes again showed up. He didn't have quite the same impact that he did the other night against the Lakers, but he had another solid all-around game, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists on only 9 field goal attempts. He was 4 of 4 at the line. Tyrese didn't quite nail Kingstradamus' prediction, but 9 points, 12 assists, 6 rebounds. Still a pretty solid game overall. And then the bench was big. Terrence Davis finally showed up again, 14 points on 5 of 8 shooting. Buddy Hield, 19 points, 4 of 10 from 3.
Yeah, I think Tyrese cooled down a little bit from that hot shooting streak, 1 of 6 from three-point range tonight. But I'm digging the turnover or the assist to turnover ratio. 12 assists tonight, only 1 turnover. I think that's huge, and that's, we talk about turnovers this whole season. Sacramento Kings turn the ball over too much, a lot of bad passes, stuff like that. So if you can get 12 assists and only turn the ball over once, that's great. And, when we watch Tyrese Haliburton, a lot of his turnovers are not even bad passes. It's him getting called for steps, him, having issues with his footwork. We didn't see a lot of that tonight. So overall, good game for Tyrese. I love what I saw out of De'Aaron Fox. I think he was 7 of 10 from the field at halftime, and he continued
it. Great game.
Continued it into the second half, and then Marvin Bagley, great game for him. I love seeing him on the glass, and this is the first game where we've seen him actually get it going offensively, and they seem to be feeding him a little bit more.
Oh yeah, they could tell he was feeling it early on, and he was getting shots right around the rim, and he was converting on them. What you don't want to see is him take 5-6 threes a game, and he's stayed away from that since they've moved him to the center position.
Yeah, no threes for him tonight, but 12 of 20 from the field. Did a lot of work inside. Does this change your opinion on Marvin Bagley?
Well, I think my opinion on Marvin Bagley has been slowly changing over the course of the entire season, and I've kind of alluded to that. I've never necessarily said if there was a trade in place that I felt like would improve the Kings and it dealt Marvin Bagley away, that I would say no to that. But Marvin Bagley has definitely showed me over the past 2 to 3 months that on a team that gets some help here, some roster changes that improve the team, he can be a key factor on an improved basketball team. His rebounding has been fantastic. I think that he's slowly started to take better and better shots. It's debatable whether or not to play him at the 5 or the 4. He has played pretty well over these last 2 games starting at the 5. But again, you have to look at the teams that he played against, the Lakers, who start LeBron James at center, and the Rockets, who really don't have a true center either. So it's a very small window, a small sample size to go off of. But that being said, I've been really happy with what I've seen from Marvin Bagley all year long. The production hasn't always equaled what people think of when you have a number 2 pick or what they expect of him. Mm-hmm. But I think he's made a lot of changes to his game in the offseason, and I certainly wouldn't be disappointed if the Kings kept him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think he's, done a great job rebuilding his value. But at the same time, and we're going to talk about this in Around the Crown a little bit more when we talk about personnel and trades and all this stuff, but it's a little bit of an emotional thing, right? Where he seems to be playing better. Early on in the season, we're like, let's trade him for a bag of chips. Let's just get him out of here. Let's trade him for something that can help this team. Now that he's playing better, his trade value is higher. But now we're like, oh, we don't want to trade him now because he's playing better. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
It's not that I don't want to trade him. I just said that I wouldn't be disappointed if the Kings ended up hanging on to him.
Yeah.
They still have a decision to make in the offseason whether he's on the team or not, because his contract is going to be up here. They're going to have to decide how much money to pay him. Is somebody going to give him more money in the offseason? But he's played really, really well. I mean, tonight was his best overall game, obviously, of the entire season. And, JN here is right. It is one game. But his effort, his rebounding, those types of things are things that the Kings really, really need. We talk a lot about the Kings coming out flat again, and they're a bad rebounding team, and they don't match up well with small ball and all this stuff. He gives them an answer to all of those questions.
Yep.
So moving forward, I think you just have to wait and see how it goes. And like I said, if there's a trade offer in place like John Collins or, some power forward that I think is really legit, I would still pull the trigger on it.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I like what I'm seeing out of Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, I agree. I really like what I'm seeing, and it kind of goes into that old, like, the grass is greener on the other side, right? Like, we've all been looking for Christian Wood and saying, wow, we'd love to have Christian Wood. He does exactly what this team needs. We have our Christian Wood in Marvin Bagley. He just needs to be more consistent, and he needs more playing time. And now that he's finally getting it, now that he is in that starting spot, he's performing really, really well. I want to get to team stats here in a second, but before we do that, I want to hear your thoughts on Harrison Barnes tonight. 16 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 5 from three-point range. And I think he did a little bit of everything.
Yeah, another very solid game overall from Harrison Barnes. Really underrated how good of a rebounder he is for a guy his size. To echo what I just said about rebounding, that's a big thing for the Kings. His three-point shooting has been, up and down, but overall, if you look over the course of the entire season, it's been really steady. He's been over 40% for the whole year. Another solid game tonight. If he continues to chip in with, anywhere from 14 to 20 points per game, when you have Fox that's scoring, over 25 a game recently, and you have these other guys that are picking it up here and there. Tyrese has had really good scoring games. That makes this Kings team so much more difficult to beat.
Yeah, I agree. Anything that jumped out on team stats for you?
I feel like this game, it was pretty even in a lot of categories. It was really won to me in 3-point shooting, even though there wasn't a huge margin or huge disparity between the two teams. 35% for the Kings to 30% for the Rockets. The rebounding was even. The points in the paint were even. Assists, though, the Kings were really sharing the ball tonight. A season-high 33 assists. The Rockets had 25. I feel like that, to me, combined with the outside shooting and the bench production was the difference in this game. The Kings had, I forget exactly how many points. It was another game where they had over 40 points off the bench, though, and the Rockets were in the 20s.
Yep. Yeah, another great game for the Sacramento Kings. They were able to play much better in the last 3 quarters than they were in the first quarter. That first quarter was pretty rough, and I was not in a good mood. We lost power here at the studio, so I was watching the first half on my cell phone, or the first quarter, and I finally was like, what am I doing? I can turn my phone on a hotspot. I watched the second quarter on my laptop, and then we got power at halftime, so I was able to watch the rest of the game, but I was not happy. And Brendan, I want to give you a shout out here. I'm going to talk about your trade offer that you sent me on, or you sent us on Instagram in the second section here. If you guys want to hit us up on Instagram, our Instagram is right down here. You can check out our website as well if you want to pick up some cool apparel. If you want to hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, stuff like that. We love to interact with the fans. We love to hear from you all. And we'll talk about that here in the next section. All right, so Metu, 13 minutes for him tonight, 7 points. What'd you like, what'd you dislike out of Metu?
I liked his readiness and willingness to shoot open shots. Again, 3 of 4 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. He just really didn't get that many minutes tonight, and part of that was because Buddy Hield had a better game, so they really played Fox, Haliburton, Barnes, and Hield a lot in this game tonight, and they kind of had the opportunity against a Houston Rockets team that is not very big to play smaller lineup, so they didn't necessarily need Metu all that much in this game. But I thought he was really good in the short amount of time he was on the court.
Were you surprised Richaun Holmes didn't play? I mean, we saw him on the bench in the last game. They're talking about his conditioning and stuff like that, so I would assume maybe he's not up to where they want him to be to play in this game, but I was a little surprised that we didn't see him at all.
I wouldn't say that I was that surprised. I mean, the guy has missed a ton of games this season, so his conditioning, even if you didn't have an illness that tends to attack the respiratory system, you would still kind of be concerned about his stamina and his conditioning anyway. That being said, he's getting over one of those types of illnesses, so maybe they felt like it just wasn't the right time. And also this team, as I've continued to mention, is not a bigger team. Metu and Bagley starting together against the Lakers went really well for them. Bagley played really well again tonight in the center position, so I'm not surprised that Holmes didn't play today.
Okay. We had a Terrence Davis sighting, 18 minutes for him tonight, 14 points off the bench. We haven't seen this kind of production out of Terrence Davis in a while, and he'd been a pretty productive piece for Sacramento earlier in the season. What did you think about Terrence Davis's game tonight?
It was a good game. I mean, he finally was able to get some shots to fall. That's the thing for him. He's a very rhythm-type player, rhythm shooter, and for that type of player, when you take them out of the game, whether it's with an illness or an injury, and he had to go through both, so it was a longer road to get back, takes you more and more game reps to get more comfortable and back into your rhythm, and it was only a matter of time before he had one of these games. The question is, how many of them will he have going forward?
Yeah. R2D288 says, seems like you need to make the decision between Holmes and Bagley as main pick and roll man.
Yeah, I agree with that a little bit. I mean, I feel like you can play them together, and they would. The problem is when you play them together, they don't both get used in the pick and roll maybe as much as they should, or especially for Bagley, because when Holmes is out there, they use him in the pick and roll constantly. And Bagley tends to be stuck in the short corner shooting threes. I go back to what I said the other night when they played the Lakers, in that the style of play for the way the roster is composed currently is much better suited to having the floor spread with big men who can be outside but can also crash the boards, play the pick and roll. They leave the lane open for Fox. That doesn't happen as much when Richaun Holmes is in.
Yep. Jim, we're going to talk about the trade here in a few minutes when we get to the next section. We just want to talk about this game first, and then we'll move on. Looks like Kristen was a big fan of the shimmy in the game.
I mean, everybody's a big fan of the shimmy when your team wins and it goes in, right? Like, that's a great move.
At least they weren't shimmying in the first quarter, because I was still angry about that. RP says Bagley at center. I've been telling you guys this. Bagley should be the starting center for Sacramento, which is so tough because I love Richaun.
But also,
I love what he's done.
Take that with a grain of salt, because, again, these last two teams that they've played when Bagley started at center, neither of them had a real center.
Yes.
So I understand, again, the style of play seems to work for Sacramento with having a guy of Bagley's skill set play the center position. But what is it going to be like when you play teams like Philadelphia or Denver or teams that have a really, really imposing big man inside? It's not going to be the same result.
And they still need a rim protector.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm going to keep Bagley at the center, I'm going to try and bring in a 4, maybe a Serge Ibaka, maybe a Miles Turner, somebody like that will be able to play the 4 and can be the rim protector. And maybe Bagley plays center on offense and power forward on defense. That way there's a guy that can bang inside.
And that would sum up what the Kings have tried to do all season long. They've tried to play matchups and adjust in-game depending on what substitutions are made. So, I get that. But I think there's a lot of truth in whatever the comment was earlier about making a decision between who plays the center position for this team going forward.
Yeah, I think you and I talked a lot about this Kings team early on in the season and how deep of a team they were. Obviously, injuries and health and safety protocols and all that has, really taken its toll on this Kings team. But, you look at the bench tonight, 14 from Terrence Davis, 19 from Buddy Hield. When you get that kind of production out of just two guys off the bench, it's always good for your team. Buddy Hield, I think, had a decent game tonight. I saw him get hit hard late in the fourth quarter, but 4 of 10 from 3-point range. He had a steal tonight. I thought he played pretty decent defense. He didn't make a ton of mistakes. What'd you see out of Buddy Hield?
Yeah, I liked what I saw out of Buddy Hield. I mean, it's the story with Buddy Hield is never going to change for me. He's going to have a handful of games in a row where he plays. He might not score 20 or more points, but at the end of the game, you'll look down and you'll say, that was a pretty good game from him. He came in, he hit some big threes. The Kings always are better when they're hitting from outside, just like pretty much every team in the league. But at some point, there's gonna be another game where he comes in and it's Buddy Chuckets, and it's 2 of 10 from 3, or it's 3 of 14 or something like that, and he doesn't really contribute to the team winning. In terms of the shot selection and types of basketball IQ plays that he makes, those have a big impact on whether or not we say Buddy Hield is at a good game. And we haven't really seen him make the ridiculous bad turnovers or, throw it up from half court as soon as the ball crosses the half court line. Those are the types of plays that you look at and you say, even if he's having a good game in terms of he's shooting really well from the outside, he can easily take himself out of that rhythm and out of that good game very, very quickly with those plays.
Yeah. What's up, Jeff? Good to see you there. Makami, Alex, I think you have a good point here in the chat. And I'm not writing off Rashawn Holmes. I'm just saying that Bagley, I think, is better fitted to play the center position in this new style NBA. It's not a shot at Rashawn Holmes at all. It's more of what Calvin and I have been talking about this whole season, fit with these guys. We have all these players, but they don't seem to fit together. Is Tyrese a 1? Is he a 2? Where is Bagley fit? Where does Rashawn fit? Where do all these guys fit? It seems like, De'Aaron Fox is going to be the point guard. We know that. And we know Rashawn Holmes is going to play a wing, whether it's the 4 or the 3. But all these other guys, I'm not really sure exactly where they fit in on this team. Or if they're even playing the right position at this point, because the skill sets they don't seem to all fit together.
No, not quite.
And that's the only reason I suggest Bagley at the 5 is I just feel like that's the way that his style of play with De'Aaron Fox, with all these guys around him, I think he's better suited to play the 5.
Yeah, and it comes down to you have to give your best player their best opportunity to succeed, right? So people look at Tyrese Haliburton and Rashawn Holmes and how they're really great in the pick and roll game together. You would think that they would be able to do the same type of thing with De'Aaron Fox, but De'Aaron Fox is not 9 times out of 10 or maybe 7 times out of 10. He's not looking to pass off the pick and roll. He's looking to score. So in terms of spreading the floor open and giving him the lane to where he doesn't even need an initial screen to get to the basket most of the time. That's what you get when you have somebody like Marvin Bagley playing at the 5.
Yeah, there's been so many times where I've seen, De'Aaron Fox have a guy wide open cutting to the basket or rolling to the basket, and he just doesn't even look to pass the ball. And it would have been an easy layup or an easy, putback or something like that, but that's just not the style of play that he goes
and
with.
I don't think pretty sure I can speak for you when I say De'Aaron Fox does look to pass the ball. I mean, he had 8 assists again tonight. He very rare. I mean, he's never going to lead the league in assists, I would say.
Yep.
but he does share the ball. He makes good basketball decisions in terms of whether or not to give up the ball in certain situations. So it's not like I see a lot of people in the chat, not tonight, but in other shows say, well, De'Aaron Fox is a ball hog and he's a black hole and all this stuff. That's not really true. He is a score-first player, 100%, but he does look to facilitate and get other people the ball.
Yeah, it's just a different type of player. Some people are pass first, some people are score first. He's a score first point guard. That's just what he does. All right, Kyle. Let's jump here into your keys of the game. I know you mentioned Houston gives up the most points per game in the league at 116.4. The Kings are 28th in opponents scoring, so you said it was going to be a high-scoring game. And, Marvin Bagley did have a great game tonight. But when you're playing against a team like Houston, he should have a good game.
He should. A lot of the Kings players should have good games from an offensive standpoint. So key number one was who's going to take better care of the ball. Both of these teams turn it over a lot. The Kings won this one, even though it was slightly 17 turnovers for Houston, 14 for Sacramento. Number two was rebound the basketball. Houston is second to last in the NBA in rebounds per game. Again, it was very narrow, but the Kings did win this category, 53-50. And the last one was a big key, I think, to this game, which was bench production. The Kings clearly have an advantage over the Rockets in their bench, and tonight they got a lot of production from their bench, over 40 points again, which when the Kings do that, they're usually in the game, whether they win or lose. They have an opportunity to win the game.
Yeah, I want to welcome everybody in that's just joining us now. Welcome to Royal Rebounds, a Sacramento Kings YouTube channel for fans, by fans. It's Calvin over there. I'm Barry. We produce fresh Kings content almost daily, so make sure you guys hit that like button down below. If you are a Kings fan, consider subscribing to the channel. We really have a fun time here. We'd love to hear from you in the chat. We want everybody's opinion to be heard, and we want to work together to kind of, bring this Kings team up and respectable and back to the playoffs. We have a show every Friday, and we do post games after every single game, so we'd love to hear from you all. We break down the podcast into 3 different sections. The first part, we talk about the game. The second part, we talk about all things Sacramento Kings. We're going to be talking about trades, drafts, stuff like that tonight. And then the third section, we look ahead at the next week of Kings basketball and the next game, which is against the Houston Rockets. We love beer, we drink beer, and we talk about the Kings. So welcome. All right. So, we talked about De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton potentially not fitting before in the past, and it seems like we've only seen one game this year where they've both had just huge offensive outbursts, and it seems like they kind of take turns, right? Where one game Tyrese scores a lot and De'Aaron Fox is kind of in the back seat, and then another game where De'Aaron Fox scores a lot and Tyrese sits back. But the last 2 weeks of basketball or so since Fox has returned, it seems like Haliburton still gets the ball, but he's passing the ball. He's still getting these 10-assist games, and he's playing defense. I just want to hear your insights on how the fit is since Fox has returned and if your opinion has changed from earlier on in the season.
I think the fit's been really good. To me, obviously we've talked a lot on this show about would the Kings be better long-term if they just went with one of the two and tried to build the team around either one? But I've said the whole time, I think that this team can succeed with keeping both of them. The question is going to be who else is on the team. I mean, if you have nights like tonight where someone like Marvin Bagley scores 26 points, Harrison Barnes adds 16, and then you get a combined, 23 points from Buddy Hield and Terrence Davis off the bench.
Oh, it was over 30 for them too. It was,
I think it was 19 and 14.
So 33.
Yeah, 33 points. So if you're going to get those types of contributions from other players, Tyrese doesn't have to score 20 points a game on this team, especially if he's going to be around double-digit assists every game. And if he's adding, somewhere from 9 to 13 points, I think that is a combination that works for this team. But the problem has been that outside of those two guys, they haven't consistently gotten the other production from the other players on this team.
Yep.
Any of those guys that I've mentioned, they haven't consistently performed the way that this team needs them to perform. So if you're looking at how the Kings go about restructuring this roster moving forward, a lot is going to depend on what types of deals they're going to get in return. And when you're talking about dealing for guys like Ben Simmons and the bigger name people in this league, it's probably going to require De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Haliburton to pull that trade off. So Monty McNair has a tough decision to make. It's, do I double down on these two guys and try to build a better supporting cast around them, which may not be easier to do than to pull the trigger on one of these big name deals that sends Tyrese or De'Aaron to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and, we're all happy when Marvin Bagley has a great game. We're all happy when Buddy Hield has a great game. But like Calvin said, they haven't been consistent, and that's the key. If you were to take this Kings team and you take, Fox, Haliburton, you have Harrison Barnes playing well, you have Bagley playing well, you put in a 2020 potential guy in Rashawn Holmes, and a 6-man playing well in Buddy Hield, this is a good Kings team, and they're going to win a lot of games. But the thing is they haven't been consistent with that. It's been one guy plays well, the other guys underachieve, and then, the next game, somebody underachieves and somebody else plays well. We saw the start of the season, the Kings started out really well, and Harrison Barnes was playing way above himself. He was shooting lights out, especially from three-point range. So I think you hit it right on the head here, where the key is consistency, and that's the difference between a good team and a bad team, and a good player and a great player. Is a great player can do that night in and night out and stay consistent. We all talk about potential, and we look at this Kings team and we say the potential for this team is so high. De'Aaron Fox should be an all-star. Tyrese Haliburton's in his second year in the league. The last 2 months, he's leading the league in three-point percentage. He broke all these records, first Kings player to have double-digit assists in the last 10 years or something like that. Harrison Barnes is a good player. If Bagley can play up to this potential, if Rashawn can stop getting poked in the eye and, remain healthy and play his normal style of basketball, this is a good Kings team. It's just how often can they do that?
Yeah. Yeah, how often can they do that? And again, I think style of play is a major factor in whether or not this team is ultimately going to be a good team. The way that the team is constructed right now, I don't think up until the last couple of games, which again hasn't been against the greatest competition, I don't think they've really had a true style of play. It's always been changing. It feels like sometimes they're trying to play two different styles within the same game.
Yep.
And that has been a huge hindrance to this team all season long.
And it's a double-edged sword, right? Because we talk about, well, under Luke Walton, we knew what the style of play was, but then we'd also be critical of him and say he didn't make any adjustments at halftime. Right, the Kings, they played their ass off in the first half, and then he didn't make adjustments, and that's why they lost the game. Versus now, maybe they do make adjustments, but we can't identify the style of play that they even do, and that's got to be harder on the players. We want them to make adjustments mid-game. We want them to make adjustments mid-quarter, stuff like that. But you still have to be clear with your style of play and what your expectations are for each one of these guys.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I will say I believe Alvin Gentry has done a good job of, and that's making adjustments within each individual game. It hasn't always worked out for him, but I think that he's very aware of that. And a good example of that was just the other night against the Lakers. He started with Metu and Bagley at the 4 and 5, and the Kings got off to a very good start, but then he subs in Alex Len before Dwight Howard comes in the game. Mm-hmm. That's when the Lakers go on a really big run because Alex Len was not a good matchup for the Kings in that game. Second half, we didn't see Alex Len for a lot of that second half. They stuck to what worked for them, and I think that's a direct result of Alvin Gentry seeing what's going on in the game and making a good halftime adjustment.
Yeah, I agree. And, games like this, we're all happy they got a win. But, I'm going to go back to that first quarter again. I did not like it at all. 40 points for Houston. They shot 61% from the field. Luckily, Christian Wood was in foul trouble and missed most of the second quarter. But if he hadn't picked up that third foul and he had been in the game, it could have been a whole different game.
Yeah, it definitely could have been a whole different game.
And De'Aaron Fox played the entire first quarter, so he sat out like most of the second quarter where the Kings were able to go on a run and get back in this game. And then, yes, he was able to do stuff in the second half and had a great game. But the Kings made a huge run when De'Aaron Fox was on the bench in this game.
Well, and that goes back to one of my keys to the game was that the Kings bench had an advantage in this game. So you have to trust or you have to go to what you think your strengths are, and the Kings bench isn't always a strength because Buddy Hield doesn't always come out and score 20 points and shoot efficiently from the floor. Davion Mitchell had another really tough game on offense. I think he was 2 of 11 from the floor. Yep, 2 of 11, 0 of 4 from 3. But Terrence Davis was there. He was able to step up. So you have to at least trust that when you think that you have an advantage in the game, you have to keep with that. I mean, De'Aaron Fox can't play 48 minutes a game.
Exactly.
That won't happen.
Exactly.
So.
He wants to, but he can't. Shout out Sean, Jay, Jim, Fred, Jeremiah. I see you guys all here in the chat. Mike, Bass. Thank you guys for joining us. Happy to have you guys here. I think Fred had a good point here. He said they need consistency in defense to win and prove to us that they can be a team for the future. I think that's 100%. That's the key is defense and consistency. We also got to give a shout out to Tanvir. I see you, buddy. We haven't seen you in a little while. It's good to see you back here. Holla, says Jeremiah. Yeah, guys. I hope you guys are having fun. We're not winning a lot of games this season, so we got to enjoy these W's while we can, even if it is the Houston Rockets. But hey, we're playing them again, and then we got the Pistons, so we could go on a 3-game winning streak here. We could, Cal.
Yeah.
We could.
Could definitely. 4 games, actually.
Anything else you want to talk about before we move on here to the next section?
No, I mean, this is, I think everybody needs to, keep this all in perspective. It's great to see another win. It's good to see 2 wins in a row, but these are games that the Kings should win.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lakers game, maybe that could have gone either way, but this game, the next game against the Rockets, the Pistons, those are games that, even though the Kings haven't been a great team all season long, we all agree that they're better than those 2 teams. So it's going to be a much more simple answer here when we do these shows at the end of the games. If the Kings win those games, as opposed to if they lose, we're all going to be saying, everyone's comments in this chat are going to be trade everyone, because that's what it is when the Kings lose.
We even have a guy whose username is trade everybody.
Yeah.
Sean, I see you here. He says, keep Fox and Hallie and bring in better players to surround them. That's a good plan and all, but how are you going to do that? That's my whole question. If you're getting the 8th, 9th, 10th pick every year, that's a very slow way to add to this team. And if no free agents want to come to Sacramento, I'm not sure how you're going to do that. I really don't. All right, RP says Bagley needs to play center for the next few games. Let Holmes come off the bench until he feels conditioned. I don't disagree with that. I don't know if it's going to take
disagree with that either.
A few games, but I don't disagree with that at all. I don't. Alex says, agreed. Don't want to get too happy yet. Let's get this 4-game winning streak, and let's get the Raiders W tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Raiders need to win. We need the Rams to win on Monday. It's
a lot of people want the Niners to win as well, but
yeah, it's Jay says trade for Miles Turner.
Okay.
All right.
My team's not in the playoffs, so it doesn't even matter to me. Anybody can win. I don't care.
I think that's our cue. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to dive deeper into your Kings with Around the Crown. Welcome back. This is Around the Crown. We're talking all things Sacramento Kings and beyond. Join the Royal family by hitting that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, you might as well smash up that like button, especially if you are a Kings fan. All right, Calvin, you want to remind everybody about All-Star voting?
Yes, All-Star voting is going until January 22nd. So time is running out here. De'Aaron Fox is making a late push, perhaps, for an All-Star appearance. If you're a Kings fan, maybe you don't totally support De'Aaron Fox. I don't know why that would be, but I think he should be getting some votes. I don't know if he should actually crack the All-Star lineup here, but he should definitely be getting some votes.
Vote for all the Kings. We need to see a Kings jersey at All-Star Weekend. You know, unfortunately this year, and I say this in a funny way, unfortunately it's in Cleveland, so, you know, you don't want to send all your players to Cleveland because they're probably not going to have the best time. What did Joakim Noah say? There ain't shit to do in Cleveland.
There is not anything to do in Cleveland. I don't know how many people in this chat have ever been to Cleveland, but there is not much to do there.
But hey, we'd like some representation. We're Kings fans. We want to see a Kings jersey at All-Star Weekend. So vote for all your favorite Kings. You get one vote every single day. So let's make it happen. All right, I want to talk about trades here. I want to talk about the draft. But before we do that, I want to wrap up a few things from that Lakers game. First off, we saw Alvin Gentry going at Buddy Hield. And we've seen this a few times. We've seen all different people. It seems like Buddy Hield is the guy to yell at on this Kings team. We've seen Mo Harkless do it. We've seen De'Aaron Fox do it. We've seen Alvin Gentry do it. Everybody, and we've even seen Dave Yeager do it. Everybody takes out their aggression and their frustration on Buddy Hield. But according to Sean Cunningham, Kings interim coach Alvin Gentry said he has apologized to Buddy Hield today in front of the team at practice after lighting him up during the game. Gentry said he was actually wrong in what he was trying to bring attention to, and Buddy was actually right. So, Calvin, I know, you've had coaches before in the past. I'm sure you've gotten into it with them. Does this, I see this as a positive thing, but how do you feel about this? Does this show, a lot of good things about Alvin Gentry that he admitted that he was wrong?
I think it does show good things about Alvin Gentry. None of the coaches that I ever played for would ever have done this. I will just say that. And they're not anywhere near on the same level as Alvin Gentry, so it's not really a fair comparison. But I think a lot of coaches would have a hard time doing something like this. And it's whether or not it was the right thing to do. I think when you have a guy like Buddy Hield on your team, it's good to give tough love in the moment like that, but it's also good in this case to come back and say, I was in the wrong, Buddy was right, it was wrong of me to do that. There's probably more that goes into this story that none of us are ever really going to know about, but, for any individual, it takes a lot to admit when they're wrong, especially when you're a public figure and you're having to announce it in front of your entire team or in front of the media or something like that. So, I do give credit to Alvin Gentry for doing this.
Yeah, we talk about accountability is really, really important. Obviously, whatever he was yelling at Buddy, when they go back to watch the game film and the footage, he's either going to tell him again or he's going to realize he was wrong, like in this situation. So apologies are always valuable, especially when they're sincere and when they're needed. In this situation, I think it was needed. And, he's accountable for his actions. And he said, Buddy, I was wrong. I didn't mean to do that. I was in the wrong. And I think that this is going to help improve their relationship in the future. And then, maybe Buddy Hield will play better. Maybe next time they have an altercation, Buddy will listen or Alvin will listen more as well. I don't know, but I think this is good for their relationship and good for the Kings.
Probably. We'll see how much longer Buddy Hield is on the team, but I think it was a good move.
All right. We see Key Kings in here. Gothan, good to see you guys. Afghan, good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us. You guys are a little late, but that's okay. We're not going to write you up here.
Better late than never.
He said, as long as the Eagles and Cowboys end up losing, I'm good. I totally agree with that. You know, Cowboys and Eagles. That's all I got to say. All right, so wrapping up this Lakers game here, we all saw the good joke the Kings had at Russell Westbrook's expense.
Yeah, man, we should have had that song keyed up for this, but he was cold as ice.
He was cold as ice. He was officially the cold as ice player of the game after having a horrible shooting night against Sacramento. We heard about his post-game press conference where he goes after the Kings saying, I wish they would have played that the last 14 years. It's cute, blah, 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 all this. I heard today that apparently the league is stepping in here, and they're not allowing the Kings to do this anymore.
Yeah, you ruffled some feathers when the league comes in and says you can't do it anymore. I think it's hilarious, actually. It's just funny to me.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it.
Yeah. What's up, Patrick? Good to see you. Yeah, it's that's crazy, man. How can the league come in and say no to this? We've seen so many crazy antics and all this stuff. Like,
to be specific here, I think and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what the league actually came in and said is that you can't have. They put Russell Westbrook's picture up on the big screen as the cold as ice player of the game.
Yeah.
So I think that's what they're saying you can't do. They didn't necessarily, I think, say that you can't play cold as ice every time someone misses a shot, which I would love to see the Kings keep doing every time Russell Westbrook plays in Sacramento. But they just can't put him up on the big screen and say he was the cold as ice player of the game.
You can't make up your own awards.
I think what the Kings need to do is let's reach out to Coors Light or Coors Beer and get a sponsor for the cold as the Rockies player of the game, or the cold, the mountains are blue players of the game, or something like that.
Yeah, or they could sponsor us here on the channel. We can have a cold as ice player. But I think this makes it official. The Kings are not trading for Russell Westbrook.
Oh man, I would hope not. I like Russell Westbrook as a player, but I think that would be it would not be a beneficial move for Sacramento.
Yeah, a rough game for him, and it'll be interesting to see how he progresses throughout this season. I think the major knock on him has just been he's got no championship. He's been to the finals once. He lost. He had Harden and Durant on that team. Triple-double machine, but does it equal winning? We're not really sure at this point. All right, I want to show this this trade here. Give me 1 second. I want to give a shout out to Brendan for sending me this. I really appreciate you. All right, Vinny, you can show my screen here. Sorry, guys, it's a little bit small, so I'll read it out.
It's a mega trade. I hope you guys are ready for this.
It is a 4-team deal between the Pacers, the Kings, the Sixers, and the Hornets. I can't zoom in anymore, Vinny. I wish. Oh, I can do that. All right, I'll read it out for you guys. So, Pacers receive P.J. Washington, James Bouknight, and a 2022 first-round pick from Sacramento. This is a lottery-protected pick. I really like that. Kings receive Tobias Harris, Miles Turner, and Ben Simmons. Sixers receive Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, Marvin Bagley, and the Hornets receive Rashawn Holmes.
Yeah, sorry, Charlotte. Man.
I couldn't think of a bigger deal ever happening in the NBA. This is an absolute blockbuster. You talk about...
If this actually happened, this would go down as one of the craziest trades ever made in NBA history. I think.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it does, help some of these teams. You look at the Pacers, they're looking to rebuild. I like P.J. Washington. James Bouknight, it's a rookie season for him. You also get a first-round pick here. That's pretty good return for Miles Turner. You look at the Sixers, Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, Marvin Bagley. I think that's a pretty decent return for Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons. I think that helps them compete this season, and I think they get away from that huge Tobias Harris contract. You look at the Hornets. They gave up Bouknight.
The Hornets need a center. That's
P.J. Washington.
That's for sure, they do.
They get a center here. Maybe it'll take another pick, maybe a first-round pick from one of these teams to make this deal work for them. But I do think that this deal works for all three of those teams. Then you look at Sacramento. Tobias Harris, Miles Turner, Ben Simmons. I don't really know what to expect from Ben Simmons or Tobias Harris through the rest of the season. One's dealing with an injury. One's dealing with a mental, whatever you want to call it. But I do like Miles Turner. And all these guys are locked up for the next 2 to 3 years or 4 years. So it gives them something to build off of. And if the Kings do end up missing the playoffs this season because, maybe Tobias Harris isn't available or Ben Simmons doesn't fit in right away, they still have their first round pick because it is lottery protected. Mm-hmm. So, Kyle, I want to hear your thoughts on this deal.
Well, my initial thought on this deal is that there's less than a 1% chance of this deal actually happening. The more players you have involved, the more teams you have involved, the harder it is to actually get a deal done. This trade has so much stuff going on. And that's the thing, is you have to get all 4 teams to buy into this trade. I don't like this deal from an Indiana perspective. PJ Washington is an acceptable replacement for losing somebody like Miles Turner. However, PJ Washington and Sabonis together, I'm not really sure that's a great fit. And James Bouknight is a young, promising player, but they already have Chris Duarte, who's been mentioned in the Rookie of the Year comments. I don't really think you can play the two of them at the 2 and the 3. I see them playing the same position, so I don't like it from that perspective. There's a ton of money that's getting thrown around in this deal as well, which makes it really hard for this to actually go through. So I agree with you. There are some things to like, in various aspects of this deal, but it is very unlikely that this actually happens.
It's a huge deal. It is an absolute blockbuster. And shout out to Brendan. Thank you for sending us this. Vinny, you can cut my screen. We like to
yeah, I mean, I love the creativeness of this deal. Just to think about a deal like that actually happening, if something like that were to ever happen, even if it didn't involve the Kings, everybody that follows basketball would be talking about it for such a long time because there's so much stuff happening and you have so many teams involved. It would be a really cool storyline to see how it played out for each individual team and which team ended up winning that trade. But it's a really, really difficult thing to get that type of deal done.
I got to give another shout out to Brendan here because he went the extra mile. He said, I made the team on 2K. Harris got an all-star reserve spot, and the Kings were the 5th seed in the playoffs. It was Hallie, Davis, Simmons, Harris, Turner.
That's on 2K. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, we can make our team good on 2K as well.
Yeah. And Patrick, responding to your comment here, it's hard to say that Ben Simmons doesn't have a mental issue when his agent is literally going to the team saying the reason he isn't playing for Philadelphia is because he is dealing with mental obstacles or mental hurdles. That's literally what he's telling Philadelphia, is that he can't play because he has mental issues going on.
And, I saw something about this earlier today, and it was like, okay, well, I think it was like, it was either Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith or somebody was talking about this, but it's like, okay, well, do you want the guy to have mental issues and come to Sacramento, or do you want him to not have mental issues and was using mental issues as an excuse to still get paid?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think this is. Maybe he does have some type of mental hurdle to go over, but I believe that he is using this as an excuse for first and foremost to not have to play in Philadelphia anymore.
And get paid.
Well, they are fining him, but he is still getting paid. But you're right. Do you want somebody who really is dealing with mental health issues to come to who hasn't played in 9 months?
Yeah, at least.
To come to your team? Or do you want a guy who hasn't played in 9 months who's pretending to have mental issues so he doesn't have to play to come to your team? Neither of those are really good looks.
Yeah. And, I like Miles Turner. He's the best part of this trade that I like because I think the Kings need a rim protector, and he can also space the floor with three-point shooting. But, the Kings are giving up a lot. They're giving up Harrison Barnes.
They're giving up a ton.
They're giving up Marvin Bagley, which, we both talked about. His value has been up and down, and we don't know what's going to happen to him next season. But you're bringing in 3 guys that all make a decent amount of money. I really like the Miles Turner contract because I think he's only $17 million for like the next 2 seasons, something like that. But Tobias Harris makes like $80 million in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Plus, you have Ben Simmons on a supermax contract. What does this mean for Tyrese? Are you going to be able to afford him? What does this mean for adding additional guys to this team? Because this really does fill you up as far as salary cap goes.
Yeah, and I don't have any confidence that the Kings would be one of those teams to pay the luxury tax either.
Key King says, do you guys think Rich Paul had conversations with the Kings organization and maybe he told the Kings that Ben's mental issues are gone?
It's possible. Maybe. But I also feel like if that was the case, then perhaps this deal would have already been done.
I've seen reports saying that the Kings have been engaging this week with trade offers with the Sixers on Ben Simmons, but they were all exploratory talks at this point. I think it's important to remember that today is the day where Richaun Holmes becomes trade eligible, and anybody on the Kings roster is now tradable at this point. So I think that's important as well. But yeah, it's a really puzzling situation. I like Ben Simmons a lot as a player, but the more and more that this spirals, it just seems to be an ultimate Kings move is to trade for a guy on a big contract that's unhappy where he is. And then what does that mean for Sacramento? Is that going to continue? And then everyone's just going to be like, oh, it's the Kings, and that's what they do over and over and over again. Or there's that upside where he's the next Chris Webber.
It's an incredibly high risk, high reward move. And the risk becomes even higher if you're involving somebody like Tyrese Haliburton or De'Aaron Fox in this deal.
Yep. Yeah, they were talking about it today on ESPN about who has the leverage now. Is it Ben Simmons? Is it Daryl Morey? And everyone's saying Ben Simmons has it at this point. And I agree with him because you have Embiid, you have a team that's been playing pretty well, but they're only going to go so far in the playoffs without Ben Simmons or whatever you get to replace Ben Simmons. So I feel like he has all, he's got the hand in this. But at the same time, if you're the Kings,
if he can afford to continue to lose X amount of dollars, right?
Like, but if you're the Kings,
there's already been that report that he's bankrupt and all this stuff. But hey, if you're going to double down, more power to you, I guess.
And if you're the Kings, you need to make a deal as well.
Yeah.
And there's almost like there's this stalemate between Monty McNair and Daryl Morey, who were best buds and coworkers for like 15 years in Houston. And now they're playing hardball with each other.
Yeah. And that's the thing to me is that everybody assumes that this deal is going to get done because of the relationship between Monty McNair and Daryl Morey. I think that there may be, the Kings might have a little bit of an advantage in that regard, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see another team step in here and make a deal that eventually gets it done when you're talking about getting Ben Simmons. Don't rule out all the other 29 teams in the league just because Daryl Morey and Monty McNair work together.
And is Ben Simmons going to be ready to play this season? Is he going to be able to play? Is he going to be able to contribute? How long is it going to take him to get in game shape?
Yeah.
We just saw Richaun Holmes miss, 7 games or something like that? I think he's maybe at 9 games now that he's missed due to a COVID. And he's having issues. Yes, it's a respiratory illness, stuff like that. He's having issues getting back on the court, but he played a month ago. As you mentioned, Ben Simmons hasn't played for 9 months. We saw him show up at practice with a cell phone in his pocket. How ready is this guy to play this season?
Right. And if I was a GM getting ready to trade for Ben Simmons, I would want video evidence that dude has been getting up 2,000 shots a day. Because it's one thing, he's going to have to struggle to get back up to game speed and playing 5-on-5 and all this stuff. I'm sure he's played 5-on-5, but he hasn't played against NBA type competition. But if this guy hasn't been working on his shot in these past 9 months, there's no chance in hell that I'm making a deal for him.
Yeah, he needs to get from where he is now back to where he was at. And then he also has things that he needs to work on to bring him to the next level beyond that. And I'm not dissing on Ben Simmons, because I think Ben Simmons is an amazing player. I think he has the closest body to LeBron James as anybody in the league, but he's got a lot of things to work on. And, his work ethic has not been something that people have raved about, even in college. All right. Are we done with Ben Simmons? Should we move on here? All right. Next deal I saw was posted by NBA Analysis. It's another De'Aaron Fox trade. But it's pretty interesting here. Everyone's been talking about who's going to stay. Is it going to be Fox? Is it going to be Haliburton? I know a lot of you guys want to keep both of them and still add talent around that. And Calvin and I have been like, well, how are you going to add talent if you're going to be, the 8th to the 12th pick every year and nobody wants to sign with Sacramento? You're going to have to trade some of these guys to get young talent here. Well, Brandon Ingram is a very talented young player. The Pelicans are not playing well. Maybe this is a trade that could work out for both teams. Sacramento Kings receive Brandon Ingram, Tomas Satoransky, Cleveland 2022 second-round pick, Lakers 2023 first-round pick. It's a swap from the Anthony Davis deal. Pelicans receive De'Aaron Fox, Marvin Bagley. How do you feel about this deal, Cal?
I don't like this deal. Brandon Ingram is a great player, great young player, great scorer. I've struggled this whole season to come up with the right deal for De'Aaron Fox. And the better he plays, the more consistent he's played as the year has gone along. I'm just not convinced that trading him is the right move. I'm really not.
And that's really the tough thing about trades, right? Is when a player plays bad, everybody wants to trade them, but then they don't have any trade value. When a player plays well, all the other teams want to trade for your guy, but you don't want to trade him.
Yeah.
So that kind of puts you in this predicament. And, you look
you're right. It's a predicament. I mean, what it comes down to is we know, like you just said, the Kings are not good enough the way that they're constructed right now to compete in the Western Conference, which may even be the worser or the lesser conference in the league. The problem is if you decide, okay, we're going to keep Fox and we're going to keep Haliburton and we're going to build around them, how many realistic moves can you make that you could say, well, this is definitely going to make the team better? Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, Harrison Barnes, those are probably the top 3 guys outside of the backcourt that you would say, these are the trade assets. This is what we're going to move. We're going to get some good players in return. But what is the market really like for those guys right now? I mean, we know the market for Buddy and Bagley has been pretty terrible for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. Harrison Barnes, I think a lot of teams would like him, but I don't think they're willing to give up one of their top 3 or 4 players in order to get him. So that's the predicament, like you said, that Monty McNair is in. How do we make this team better right now without having to give up one of those 2 guys, Fox or Hallie?
What's up, Bryce? Good to see you. Yeah, I got to go back to the first quarter in this game again tonight. I was really upset after the first quarter. And it's funny, this is actually before Bagley had a good game tonight. As I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know what? If the Kings lose this game, if they're playing like this, it's time to completely blow up this team and do a full rebuild because we haven't done one. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, okay, well, there's no point in trading Haliburton. If you're going to do a rebuild, you need somebody to build around. He's a young player. It's his second year in the NBA. He's been playing really well. You're not going to get equal value from him. And even if you do get equal value, what's the point, right? Then I'm like, okay, well, we all talk about Rashawn Holmes. He plays really well with Tyrese Haliburton. So maybe we should keep those 2 guys. Well, Rashawn's still young, but he's a little bit older than some of these guys. He's on a little bit bigger deal. He's not on his rookie scale deal. So what happens with him? So I kind of settled on this. We need to keep Haliburton. We need to keep Davion Mitchell. And we need to keep Marvin Bagley. Because those three guys are on rookie scale deals. And let's just move everybody else and rebuild. If Bagley, give him the keys. Say, Bagley, you're a starting guy for the rest of the season. We'll run Haliburton and Bagley, see what they can do. And then maybe we need to repair the relationship with Bagley at the end of the season. Maybe we need to sit back and say, Bagley, you go out to all the other teams in the league. Let's figure out what you're worth, and we'll match it, and we'll bring you back. Or if you don't want to do that, sign our qualifying offer. We'll play out one more season and go from there. Well, the Kings played much better in the other 3 quarters of this game. And I know it is only one game, and maybe I'm a little emotional in the fact that I'm willing to just flip that fast. But when the Kings are 10 games below 500 and they're losing to the worst team in the league and they just gave up 40 points on 61% shooting in the first quarter of the game, it does not look good.
No, it does not look good. And I think that's what all of us have to keep in mind here is we've seen this from this team now for the past couple of seasons. It's a bad losing streak against teams that they should lose to and some teams that they shouldn't maybe lose to. Then they come back, they win 2, 3, 4 in a row or something like that. They give you just enough to hang on to say like, well, maybe there is something here with this team. Maybe these guys can get it going together. But then they revert right back to, luckily we haven't seen any 9-game losing streaks this season, but that was the narrative last year. So I still am going to say at the end of the day that this team needs to make some roster changes. But I also acknowledge that Monte McNair is in a very difficult position right now because he could make some minor deals like we saw him make last year, getting DeLon Wright for Corey Joseph. You could argue that actually helped the Kings. I mean, DeLon Wright played really well when De'Aaron Fox was out towards the end of the season last year. He missed 10 games or something. But is that the type of move that helps put the Kings into the playoffs? It wasn't last year, and I don't think that's going to be the case this year either. So you have to make a bigger splash. But in order to make that bigger splash, I don't know if you can get away with dealing those secondary or second-tier type guys. You're going to have to include one of your big fish.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. What's up, Buddha? Good to see you there. Yeah, we're talking about trading Fox. Everybody's talking about trading Fox. So, if that's what's in the news, that's what we got to talk about, right? Yeah. I just got to say, I'm really happy with what Bagley's been doing lately. And if we need to repair a relationship with him, I'm all for it. As far as the DeLon Wright trade, I really like DeLon Wright as well. But then we flipped him for Tristan Thompson, who's been a bench cheerleader for us this season.
Yeah.
And an expiring contract who I feel is either, if you have a guy like that you're bringing in and you're not a championship contender, he's either an expiring contract at the end of the season so that you can sign somebody in the offseason, or he's a trade filler.
Yeah.
So I feel like Monty's has a plan. He's probably calling a bunch of teams, and I don't know what's on his mind. But if you go by everything he said, acquire assets, trade for a big-name guy. It's exactly what he did with Houston. He seems to be doing that in Sacramento. We praised, the tightness of the ship in the front office and how they haven't let these details leak. And that gives us less information, less things to talk about, and more things to kind of, look for or we have to read in between the lines, stuff like that. But I'm glad we won this game tonight. I'm feeling much, much better than I was after the first quarter. But it's interesting. You look back at these last 14, 15 years of losing for Sacramento, they haven't really done a full rebuild. It's been a constant hire a guy, he needs to do something to make the playoffs or I'm getting fired. So he does fringe moves to get you, and we're just in that 8 to 10 spot every year. Yes, we got lucky when we drafted Marvin Bagley in terms of we won the draft lottery. Yes, we hit on De'Aaron Fox. I think we hit on Tyrese Haliburton. The jury's still out on Davion Mitchell, even though I do like him a lot. But like I said earlier, you look at this Houston Rockets team. They got a lot of talented players as well, and look at how bad their record is. If you're going to be a playoff team in the NBA, you have to make moves. You have to add talented guys. Every team has talent. Every team has good young players, but there's something that's different between a playoff team and a team that constantly makes the lottery, and that's where we've been stuck.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to culture, which is something that we've talked so much about, over the past, ever since we started this channel. So 2 years or a year and a half or whatever it is. And when your culture is not right, you can bring in the right types of people or the right individual players. But if your organization is not set up for success from top to bottom, ultimately it's going to fail most of the time.
Yep. Yeah, Buddha, we're almost there, dude. We need 1,000, and then we can enable Super Chat, and you guys can tip us. But in the meantime, if you want to send us beer, we are cool with that. Hit us up on IG.
Get all your friends to subscribe to the channel. We'll get to 1,000, and then, we'll go from there.
There you go. There you go. Gothan says, Davion does something impressive every game he plays.
I agree with that. There hasn't been a game this season where I've watched Davion play, and I've come away from that game saying, this guy sucks. I just can't bring myself to say that. When you play that hard and give that type of effort and energy defensively, even if you shoot horribly most nights, like you said, you do something that impresses you or is good for the team every night.
Yep. But consistency is the key. You got to do it over and over and over again.
And look,
good thing a game.
The guy has only played 40-something games in the NBA in his life.
Less, because he was out with
That's true.
health
Less
and
than
safety.
That.
Yeah.
No, very few rookies are, an all-star level right away. It just doesn't work like that. So the guy, give him some time. I think that he will ultimately develop into a really good player.
Yeah, he's a little bit older, and everyone is like, okay, he's the most NBA-ready guy because he's a little bit older. But you could also look at it in the fact that it took him 4 years in college, so it could take him a little bit longer in the NBA to adjust as well. I think he's going to be a great player. He just needs time. He just needs time. What's up, Mike? Tobias for Barnes. Do we go after Miles Turner for Holmes?
Well, it's going to require more than Harrison Barnes to get Tobias Harris because their salaries don't match. But I like where your head's at. I mean, that would be a good start. I love Miles Turner. Tobias Harris, I don't think is as well-rounded of a player as Harrison Barnes is, but he's a much better scorer. So, I wouldn't necessarily say that would be a disappointing move to me. But it's going to require more pieces than just those four names.
I mean, you could do probably a Harrison Barnes and a Tristan Thompson for Tobias Harris. But, what's going on with this shoulder injury in Tobias? What is he going to bring to this team?
Not just shoulder. Tobias Harris has a long history of injuries. Long history.
Yeah. And I like Tobias Harris a lot. I liked him in Orlando. I liked him in L.A. I like him with the Sixers, but dude makes a ton of money, and it just it seems like a classic Kings move of trading for a guy who makes a ton of money, who's got injury problems, and then the Kings are the ones that end up getting screwed.
Yeah, but it also, we just talked so much about the Kings needing to take a risk and needing to make a more of a splash type move. That would be one of them that they could take for sure.
Yeah, Vinny, I'll have another beer. Why not? Why not? We got our beer guy grabbing us another beer here. I hope you guys are enjoying one as well, because it's another Kings win tonight, so we got to celebrate. We don't get many of these opportunities. I got to say, it feels pretty good, Cal, when you turn on ESPN and they're talking about Sacramento, because they don't talk about us a lot.
Even if it's for the wrong reasons, I guess.
Well, I mean, we've been involved in all these potential trade deals and stuff like that. So, it's just happy to hear that they're talking about us, and we're getting pretty close here, guys. My predictions of January 18th as the first Kings trade is only 4 days away, and the trade deadline is less than a month away. So I think we are going to have some things happen here. I think one thing that you and I, we agree on a lot of things, but one thing that we really do agree on is that they need to make a move, and they need to choose a direction. And we haven't really seen what that is. It seems like, Monty took over and he just kind of sat back, and it's like, okay, I'm new here. I got to figure out what's going on, where the problems are, and then I'm going to make actions. And it's been, a year and a half now? He re-signed Fox. He re-signed Holmes. I like those deals. He didn't trade any of our draft picks away, which I like. He didn't sign any bad contracts. But there comes a point, and we've talked about this, over and over again. There comes a point where not making a bad move, or not making a move in general for a long time, becomes a bad move.
Right.
And how long is that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, and it probably requires hindsight to actually figure out how long it takes in order for that to become a bad move. But you're right, that this trade deadline, I can't think of in recent memory of a trade deadline that is more set up for the Kings ever. I mean, there's so many guys who are either not with their current teams, or they're disgruntled with the roles on their teams. And these are big name people. I mean, Jaylen Brown keeps coming up in trade talks all the time with Boston. I still think it's ridiculous that his name is being mentioned. De'Aaron Fox's name keeps getting mentioned. You've got the Pacers wanting to blow it up. Brandon Ingram wants out. Zion is questionable. John Collins in Atlanta. I mean, there's so much, and it could end up happening that none of these things, or none of these guys, end up getting dealt. I mean, the trade deadline can come and pass, and no big moves could be made. But it does feel like this trade deadline could be one of the more memorable ones in recent history. So the Kings have an opportunity here. The question is, will they take advantage of it?
Yeah, I really think that this is going to be a big moment for us Kings fans. Something's going to happen here. Either we're going to make a big trade, a big splash, or they're just going to say, you know what? It's time to hit the reset button, and they're going to start shipping guys out. We're going to get a ton of draft picks. We're going to get young players, and we're going to finally have a direction and maybe a time frame on potentially when we're going to be, competing. Because I feel like the only way that they blow this team up is if they say, okay, we're going to do a 2-year rebuild, or we're going to do a 3-year rebuild, and this is what we're going to do. We have too many analytics guys in our front office to just go into a half-ass rebuild. It's going to be very, very well planned, and it's going to be scripted, and hopefully we'll be in and we'll know exactly, how long we can expect. And, there's a difference between Thunder fans going to games knowing that they're not competing for the playoffs, but they have a lot of good young talent, and fans are still going and rooting for their team, versus a team like Sacramento that's been losing for so long, and all the Kings fans want is to make the playoffs. And the team's like, we're trying. We're going to mortgage the future to make the playoffs this season. And just it happening over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose games, but if they were to just blow it up and say, this is the plan and this is what we're doing, it's almost like there'd be a sense of relief for me, because I would say, okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of Kings fans would be in that boat.
There's a reason why they're losing games now. It's not just because we're trying and we suck.
Or we're not good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and, not that I want them to trade De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese or any of these guys, but a move needs to happen. I want the Kings to be good. Whatever it takes for them to be a good team, sign me up. Sign me up.
Yeah.
All right, Calvin. Well, I know you mentioned John Collins. I think he'd be an awesome addition for the Sacramento Kings. We talked about issues at the 4 position. He would fit it to a T. So I want to know what you're giving up for him.
And that's a good question. Again, I feel like somebody like John Collins is going to require one of your best 2 or 3 assets that you're going to have to give up in order to get him back. I think John Collins makes a lot of sense, like you said, for Sacramento. I would be very interested to see what the initial round of negotiation was like when you picked up the phone and called Atlanta and said, hey, I'm interested in John Collins. Let's give you, I don't even know what the salaries would have to match, but let's give you Harrison Barnes and Marvin Bagley or something like that. Would they go for that deal? I don't really know.
Yeah, Buddha. Vlade also said he wasn't trading Boogie Cousins too, and we all know how that ended up. So it's really tough. What's smoke and mirrors? We don't know. So John Collins is on a brand new 5-year, $125 million contract extension. So he's making $23 million this season, $23.5 million next season, and it kind of goes up from there. So I think a guy like Harrison Barnes and maybe another small filler could potentially make a deal work. I don't know if that moves the needle for Atlanta.
Right.
If I'm Atlanta, I'm not trading John Collins for Harrison Barnes straight up.
They did just get rid of Cam Reddish, so maybe they would welcome, a wing like Harrison Barnes onto the team. And Marvin Bagley, at least that's a lateral move. You get a player that can play the same position as John Collins, even if he hasn't been producing in the same way. But again, it's so hard to tell if that is enough to make Atlanta want to pull the trigger on that deal.
Yeah. Everyone thinks that Monty's in a tough spot, and, not saying that he's not in a tough spot, but when the fans are yelling, make a trade, let's make a move, all this, I feel like if I was the GM of a basketball team and the fans were all on board of making big splash moves, like, that gave me the green light. Like, I would be so excited. Like, okay, you guys want to move? Let's make a couple moves. Let's blow it up. Let's bring in Miles Turner. Let's bring in Ben Simmons. Let's bring in, Ingram. I'm going to try and bring in as many of these guys as I can. I'm trading future draft picks, all these guys. If that's what you want, let's make it happen. That's got to be the funnest thing as a GM, is just having the green light to just go out and do whatever you want.
Also the most stressful.
Uh-oh. Sean said, Deuce and Mo's live stream just died. Oh, man.
Tough.
That sucks. We like Deuce and Mo a lot. We encourage you guys to watch Deuce and Mo. We want you to watch us as well. I feel like,
and we definitely understand what it's like to have your live stream die or your camera burn out.
Yeah.
So
we're not competitors. We all want the same thing. We want the Kings to do well. We all want Kings players, Kings fans to feel their voices are heard, and, we all have the same goal. So I feel like we all support each other, but thank you for tuning back in. Mike says, I'd give Barnes and Harkless TD for Collins.
I would too. But again, does Atlanta do that deal? I don't know.
Sean says, what's your biggest takeaway for this win tonight?
Biggest takeaway was, can Marvin Bagley actually play like this consistently? That's my biggest takeaway for sure. And I don't have the answer to that question either.
I like him a lot at the center. And, honestly, I've been a big fan of Christian Wood, but my viewpoint on Christian Wood has gone down a little bit tonight.
Well, he's really not much of a defensive player. I mean, Christian Wood is a very talented offensive player. And I think he's been more consistent offensively at the power forward or center position, whatever they play, than Marvin Bagley has. But we talk so much about defense being the number one need for this team. So do you go all in on making a move for a guy that doesn't play a lot of defense?
Yep.
You know, it just comes back to this whole give and take thing. You got Ben Simmons out here who could really help the Kings defensively. But is that the type of person that you want to take a flyer on or a risk on? Christian Wood is another good player. Jeremy Grant is a really good player at the power forward. Neither of those guys are really known as being defenders in this league. So it's a really difficult balancing act to perform here.
Yep. You don't make a move just to make a move. You got to do your due diligence. You got to contact everybody. You got to look at the players that are available, and you got to make the moves that you win, that improves your team. You look at some of the best GMs in the league over the past 20 years, and people say, oh, they fleeced this other team, or they did this, they did that. But in reality, it's they made the move that made their team better. And that's what the Kings need to do. They're not just trading players to trade players. They need to trade players with a plan, and they need to, take A and B and get something that's worth more than that in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
If like building a basketball team is not rocket science. Like it may seem like it, but it's really not. You have a couple different options. You have the players that are currently on your team, you have the draft, you have free agency, and you have trades. And whatever you can do, you need to take those three avenues, trade, drafting, and free agency, to improve your roster. Simple. I wish it was that simple, but
yeah,
it's
I was
really
going
not.
to say it's not that simple,
it's not
unfortunately,
that simple.
but because you're dealing with the human aspect.
Yep.
But
so Key King says the Thunder basically told the fan base that they were rebuilding, and the fan base now doesn't have high expectations or are confused on how their roster is constructed. How would you feel, Calvin, if Monty told you and he said, we're rebuilding for the next 3 years? Are you still going to games? Are you still supporting the team? Like, how are you going to feel if he's like, hey, guys, we have a plan here, and our goal is to win a championship, but we're not going to be competitive for the next 2, maybe 3 seasons?
Well, I would have mixed feelings on that. I think going back to what you said earlier, as long as somebody is telling me there is some type of plan in place, even if it's going to take 3 years to achieve that plan, I think that you have to be happy with that to some degree. Would I watch all the games? It would be really hard if your team is only winning, 15 to 20 games every year to watch every single game.
Well, you have to watch them all.
I was going to say, aside from the fact that I have a responsibility to report on these games now, if I was just a regular fan that didn't have a podcast after the game, I don't know how many games I would actually watch. If they were really tanking or being that type of bad team that is going to win 15 games a year, that's hard to do for any sport, no matter how much you love the team. Would I tell people that I wasn't a Kings fan? Probably not. I don't know how many games over the course of an 82-game season I would watch, but I go back to, you still would kind of feel like you would be requiring to trust Monty in that he's going to fulfill that promise that it's going to take 3 years, or even if it's 5 years or whatever the case may be. But I think, like you said, as long as there's some sort of plan that you can actually see,
you need a light at the end of the tunnel
performed or the moves being made, then it is somewhat okay to accept that.
Mike says we should have hired Weber as the GM. I mean, I like Weber a lot. Calvin likes Weber. He's a Michigan guy.
Well, I love Chris Weber as a player, but what confidence or what has he done in his life to show you that he could be a good GM? I mean, he doesn't have any type of track record when it comes to that stuff. So
yeah, and I know Monty's never had a head GM position before, but I was positive in the fact that they hired him because he does have some experience working in a front office. He's been with Houston for like 13 years as assistant GM. He was in the scouting department. Like, we just got over an ex-player. And as much as I like Vlade, he's not a GM. Yeah. And GMs took advantage of him because he wasn't a GM. And as much as I like Chris Webber, I want him to be involved with this Kings team to some extent. And I don't want to be taken advantage of. A lot of teams
around the league have guys who are former players, like Dirk Nowitzki, for example, who are special advisors or assistants to the GM or the president of basketball operations, whatever the case may be. I think Webber would be a great candidate for that type of job, but I'm not ready to give him the full keys to the car, you know, or the engine.
Yeah. Sean says, I'm pretty sure Marvin learned a thing or two from Holmes with that mid-range push shot. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. He definitely needs to expand his offensive game a little bit. I mean, he did a great job in the post tonight against a defender who's not a great post defender. He took advantage of that. But he really, to me, only has 2 moves. He's got to expand his offensive game a little bit, whether that's developing more of an outside shot or adding more pieces to his one-on-one game or his post-up game. He needs a little bit more. He's survived for his whole life off being the most talented or the most athletic or the biggest guy on the court. In high school and in college, that's all great because you can take advantage of those things. But in the NBA, it's a different story. And that's why Marvin Bagley hasn't lived up to the number 2 draft pick that he was taken with. Injuries obviously have played a part in that, but it's also because his game hasn't developed at the rate that it should have.
And as someone mentioned here in the chat, big guys take longer to develop. That's just,
They do.
That's something. But you also need playing time. It doesn't help when your coach benches you for the first quarter of the season and you get 10 minutes of playing time. You know, Mike, I do agree with you. You know, we haven't made the playoffs in so long. It's time to go all in and make some risky moves. Fans don't want to wait another 3 to 5 years. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to wait another 3 to 5 years. You're right. But at the same time, we've seen this movie before. You know, they traded for Rudy Gay. They tried these deals to bring in fringe guys. Not a lot of people want to come to Sacramento. So you either have to overpay guys or overtrade for guys to bring them in here. And that's why we're at this 15-year playoff drought, is because they haven't done a rebuild the right way. They've tried to skip steps. They've tried to just pull the trigger and go all in on these moves. And yes, you know, as a fan, I'm like, I don't want to waste the rest of this season. I don't want to waste next season because, you know, players' careers are so short and, you know, every year is valuable. But at the same time, that's why we're in this position right now. And if you do pull the trigger on a guy, maybe you trade for Tobias Harris and it doesn't work out for him and you had to give up draft picks for him, then we're set back 3 more years where we have to wait to get our picks and we have to clear salary before we can start another rebuild again. So I'm kind of in the middle. You know, I want them to make a big move. I want to make the playoffs this season. I really, really do. But at the same time, how many times do you do the same thing until you realize this is not the right move?
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's the big debate that we just keep on having, right?
And we don't know what the offers are. We really don't know what these trade offers are. So, you know, we could all say, pull the trigger. Let's make a trade happen. I heard about this. I heard about that. Let's make a move. But we're not on those phone calls. We don't know what Monty's being offered for De'Aaron Fox. We don't know what he's being offered for Buddy Hield or Marvin Bagley. For you know, Daryl Morey could say, I want De'Aaron Fox, 3 first-round picks, and Tyrese Haliburton or no deal. If that's the case, I'm saying hell no.
Yeah.
I don't want that deal at all because that's just going to set us back. And you look at a guy like Daryl Morey, you look at his past, he's known for taking advantage of other GMs. He's known for getting the best deal that he can for his team and other teams getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe Monty learned from that. Maybe not. I don't know.
Perhaps. And Mike, we're talking about this whole Webber debate. I think you make a lot of good points. There's no doubt in my mind that Chris Webber can recognize talent. There's no doubt that he has connections in the NBA. I think all of that is very true. However, I just have a hard time putting a guy in that role. There's a lot more that goes into being GM or president of basketball operations than just recognizing talent. Vlade Divac, as much as we can debate whether or not he did a good job or not as GM, I think most people would agree that if you play as long as Vlade does, he should be able to recognize talent.
Yep.
But that's not the only thing that's required in being GM of a team. There's a lot more stuff that goes into it. And Joe Dumars, I think, is a great example of what you're talking about with Webber. Joe Dumars wasn't automatically given the GM spot in Detroit. He was a special advisor first. He worked his way in. He showed that he had what it took to do the job, and then they gave it to him. So that's all I'm saying. I would love for Chris Webber to get an opportunity, but it's the same thing that I talk about with Doug Christie. A lot of people wanted to immediately make him the head coach when he subbed in for Alvin Gentry, and I thought it was very premature. I think there's a lot of stuff that he still needs to learn, and he's on the right track to getting to that point, but I think it would have been a very premature decision to make him the full-time head coach, and I think that Webber is in the same position.
Godwin says Webber isn't scared to cheat to win either.
Man, you guys just keep on bringing that up. Hilarious. And it kills me every time.
Speaking of Doug Christie, Dave texted me today, and he's like, he's at the game, and he's like, where's Doug at? I didn't see Doug on the bench tonight. Do you know?
To be honest with you, I didn't even notice that Doug Christie wasn't on the bench.
So. I didn't see him at all tonight. He sent me a screenshot. He had some pretty good seats. He was like, right behind the basket, looking straight at the Kings bench. I don't know if Doug Christie's out in health and safety protocols or not, but shout out to him. Hopefully, if he is, he gets better soon. Mike, I love all your comments here. It doesn't mean I agree with you, but I really like all your interactions here in the chat. He said, Monty hasn't done anything in 2 years. At this rate, it wouldn't be a bad idea giving Webber a shot. In addition, Webber loves Sac and wants to create a winning culture again. I mean, all these guys love Sacramento. All these people you put in these positions want Sacramento to succeed. Nobody takes a job in Sacramento saying, I don't want them to do well. But, I don't agree with you. I feel like Monty has done something in the 2 years. Maybe he hasn't done what you wanted, but he hasn't given out bad contracts. He re-signed Fox. He re-signed Holmes. He hasn't traded away our draft picks. And he's drafted really well in the past 2 drafts. So, to say that he hasn't done anything in the past 2 years, I don't think that's really fair to him because, he hasn't made a big trade, but we don't know what those talks are like. And I don't want him to make a trade just to make a trade. You look at a guy like Vlade Divac, I think he was the epitome of just make a move because that's what he would do. And he tried to do it because he wanted to appease the fan base and he wanted this team to do better. And where did that get us? Nowhere.
Ultimately, yes. And Monty is, unfortunately, very close to being in the same position of will his lack of, trying to go out and make a big move ultimately leave the Kings in the same spot as when he took over.
Yeah. We just don't know what the moves are is the thing. Like everyone's like, just make the move, pull the trigger, all this. But if we don't know what the trade offers are, it's hard for us to comment on it because I feel like you have to trust Monty at some point into he knows what talent is. He knows what guys are worth. He's been in the business long enough, and he hasn't made any bad deals at this point. So I don't want him to just pull the trigger on a deal that's not good for Sacramento just because people want to get rid of Buddy Hield or just because people want to get rid of Marvin Bagley. So I think I respect him, and I think it really takes a lot of courage for him to hold on to guys whose dad says, I want out, or players say, I want out. We don't have any guys like Ben Simmons who's refused to show up. All of our guys have been involved. They've agreed to play. Monty seems to have a good relationship with them. while he's also trying to get the best deal possible for Sacramento.
Yeah. Sean says most Kings fans are mad that Monty didn't go after Cam Reddish. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Cam Reddish a lot. I think he should have gone after him. I also like Bol. I think he's still got a chance to get a guy like Bol. But, you know, as I said before, I don't know what the offers are like. I'm not giving up a first-round pick for Cam Reddish and another young player. And it seems
it
like
didn't end up costing it. Or actually, I'm sorry, it did cost a first-round pick.
It seems like that's what they wanted, right? Was they wanted Kevin Knox and a first-round pick. And if I'm Sacramento, I like Cam Reddish a lot, but I don't know if I'm giving up a first-round pick. One, because, you know, you can't trade consecutive picks. So even if I were to say, okay, I'll give you a lottery-protected pick this year and a young player, which is probably going to be Davion Mitchell. It's probably what they wanted. That's going to impact me from making any other deals because I'm not going to be able to trade my pick until 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And does Cam Reddish move the needle on this Kings team? Probably not.
Well, the question is, how much does he move the needle? I disagree with you a little bit here. I think I would have been willing to give up a first-round pick for Cam Reddish for a couple of reasons. Number one is the Kings need wing depth. It's something that we've talked about a lot. This is a very young guy who has a lot of potential, really promising. I think he could have eventually fit into the starting small forward position on this team. If he continues to shoot the way that he shot this year, the guy has, you know, all the potential in the world. Number two, the Kings have kept their draft picks for so long now. And what has it gotten them? We agree that Tyrese Haliburton was a good draft pick. We agree that De'Aaron Fox was a good draft pick. Some people think that Davion Mitchell was a good pick. Others don't. The problem is those picks all compiled together have not resulted in a winning product. Yep. So I'm willing to move one of these draft picks in order to take the risk of getting a guy like a Cam Reddish who has a lot of potential and fills an area of need for this team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like Mark Jackson a lot. I'd be totally cool with bringing Mark Jackson on board. I like him a lot. But you know, Calvin, we have a dinner date. You know, it's a little bit later. Yes, we are in Hawaii here, so it's only about 9:15, but we got to get to a party here pretty soon. So I think we should move on to the next section and talk about next week of Kings basketball. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I'm down with that.
All right, guys, we're going to take another quick break here. And, you know, when we come back, we're going to take a look at the Kings' next game and week of basketball with Kings Crusade. Welcome to Royal Rebounds, a Sacramento Kings YouTube channel for fans by fans. The Kings continue their crusade to get back to the playoffs. And next up is the Houston Rockets again.
Deja vu.
If you're a Kings fan, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you'd like to join the Royal family with Calvin and I, smash up that subscribe button. So, Cal, as you mentioned, deja vu, Rockets again. Have your keys to the game changed at all?
They've changed a little bit. I mean, I didn't shake it up too much just because these teams are similar in a lot of ways. Neither of them play very good defense. It's probably going to be high scoring again. Neither of them are really big teams or are going to play their biggest players consistently in this matchup. So I basically just kind of went off of what this game was tonight. Number one is going to be share the ball. Kings had a season high in assists in this game, 33 to just 13 turnovers. If they can do something along those lines again, that's going to be a real positive thing for the team. Number two is three-point shooting. Again, that's something that when the Kings do well, they always improve their chances of winning. And I thought that with these two teams playing a similar style, it was an important area of the game to focus on. And then number three, again, is bench production. Kings got a lot of it tonight. They have the advantage over the Rockets. They have to win the battle of the bench points again in order to get another victory against this team.
Yeah, we got a day off in between. The game is not until Sunday. It is an early game, and the Kings have not performed well. I think they've won one early game this entire season. It'll be interesting to see if Rashawn Holmes is ready to return. I know he did some time in Stockton. I thought we'd see at least a few minutes out of him tonight, but we did not. So it'll be interesting to see if he is available on Sunday in that game. I do like starting Marvin Bagley at the 5, but if Rashawn is back, we can maybe put both of those two guys together there. But you're right. The Kings need to control the tempo of this game. They need to play a little bit of defense, and then they just need to shoot better than Houston because it is going to be an offensive, juggernaut game. It's going to be like an all-star game. No defense, a bunch of shooting. Whoever shoots better in this game is going to win the ball game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
So we got a pretty light week of Kings basketball. As we mentioned, Rockets game on Sunday. We have the Detroit Pistons on Wednesday. And, Bucks and Celtics after that. But I don't want to talk about those games because, not looking good there. We can talk about that a little bit later. I want to ride out this awesome wave of a win tonight, a potential win on Sunday and on Wednesday against Detroit. You want to comment at all about the Detroit game on Wednesday?
Hey, Monty, Jeremy Grant, better be watching.
What are you willing to give up for him?
That's the thing. I talked about it on the Royal Report earlier today. All of these mock trades that I've seen for Jeremy Grant, they don't really feel like it's a ton of value being given up for him. Obviously, he makes a decent amount of money, so you have to match the salary. But I don't see big-time all-star players being mentioned in trade deals for him. So I think that he's a player that has a lot of potential that you could probably get for what a lot of people would consider a good value deal. Something like Harrison Barnes, maybe Marvin Bagley, Buddy Hield, one of those combinations of, again, those three players that we talk about being the types of assets that I think the Kings would prefer to move and keep Haliburton and Fox. It would be worth definitely calling up Detroit and seeing what it would take. Maybe you'd have to throw in a draft pick, a second-round pick or something like that. But Grant seems like a guy that is maybe more obtainable for the type of player that he is than a lot of these other players that we talk about, Miles Turner, Sabonis, Jaylen Brown, Ben Simmons, those types of people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's clear Detroit is definitely in a rebuild. I think they might want a young player, maybe a high draft pick for a guy like that to help them out with their rebuild. But he is definitely one of those guys that is stuck in no man's land. He's the only one balling out on a horrible team.
I wouldn't say he's the only one. Sadiq Bey is having a great year.
True.
And Cade Cunningham has been hit or miss, but they do obviously have him too.
Yeah. All right. Key King says, would you give away unprotected first-round pick for Grant?
Oof. I would definitely think about it. Again, I go back to what I said earlier in that the Kings need to make some sort of risk-reward, high risk, high reward type move in order to get them out of the same struggles that we keep seeing them have over and over and over and over again. Jeremy Grant is a very fine young player. He fills a big-time area of need for this Kings team at power forward. So he is somebody that I would certainly consider giving up a first-round pick for.
If I'm a GM, I'm never giving away an unprotected pick. Maybe it's not lottery protected, but I'm only giving up picks that are maybe top 3, top 5 protected. You look back in the history of all these draft picks that have happened. Look at the Clippers. They traded a first-round pick for Baron Davis from Cleveland to get rid of his contract. That first-round pick ended up becoming the first overall pick, in which ended up becoming Kyrie Irving. So any deal I'm doing, I'm never including a completely unprotected pick. Top 3, top 5, it's got to be some protections on that deal. All right, Calvin, we've done a little bit extra here, almost an hour and 50-minute show. I think we had a lot of excitement with this Kings victory tonight over the Rockets. We're excited. There's 2 more juicy matchups coming up next. Hopefully we can celebrate some more wins. This is a 2-game winning streak for your Sacramento Kings. It feels good to get back in the win column. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up the show?
Thanks for watching. hopefully we get to do this again after another Kings win on Sunday.
Yeah, if you guys didn't check it out this morning, we released another episode 12 of the Royal Report. You guys can check it out right on this channel. We wrap up an entire week long of Kings action in about 30 minutes. Also, take a look down below here. We got our website, royalrebounds.com. If you want to keep up with us, we have an awesome store with some cool gear. You can also check us out on Instagram at Royal Rebounds or on Twitter, Royal_Rebounds. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be live Sunday after the Houston Rockets game. So make sure you guys smash up that like, hit the subscribe button. Have a wonderful evening. And in the meantime, go Kings.